Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome all of you to day 219 of Humanity Rising. I hope you all had a restful weekend as we brought Passover and we celebrated Easter around the world. Over the last week, we've been following the trial in Minneapolis of Derek Chauvin. And so each day I've been providing a brief report on what has been transpiring. Last week, culminating on Friday, we heard from various of the bystanders, and then we heard from the police. And this was essentially an unprecedented event in American jurisprudence when it comes to police officers being tried for killing or damaging victims, particularly Black males. Normally, the police act in solidarity, but this time the solidarity broke. And we had several police officers starting on Thursday last week and then culminating on Friday, supervisors, and then in particular, the policemen having the most seniority and the most experience on the Minneapolis police force, saying unequivocally that Derek Chauvin used unnecessary force and that what he did was unnecessary, and that, as we saw from the testimony of the paramedic, he was dead for several minutes while the knee of Derek Chauvin was still on his neck. So that is important because never before in American history has a police officer been convicted to the full extent of the law for violence against a Black man. So there's a lot at stake. And I think all of us, as we continue to traverse this pandemic, should all take in that the one iconic moment since the pandemic began was the killing of George Floyd. In some deep and mysterious way, this pandemic is not only about our health in a physical sense, it's about our health in an ethnic sense, in a cultural sense. And it's a challenge to all of us to think much more deeply than we were before about what justice means and what equity means in our world, and whether we can use the crisis of the pandemic as a motivator to create deeper equality and more harmony amongst humankind. In that spirit, let us pause, as we always do as we begin our sessions, and let us just come into our bodies and take a few deep breaths, close our eyes for just a moment, and place our attention on our hearts. And listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of thanksgiving and deep gratitude that you're alive. We're all alive together at this most extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude for each and every one of you who are joining our session today, I want to begin our program by noting that the drama around George Floyd was all conducted by men. The one or two women that were there, it was a woman who actually did the filming that became an international witness for what happened. Were it not for that woman filming what men were doing to each other, we probably wouldn't be even having this trial. I want to also note that just since January 1st of this year, 2021, there have been 180 mass shootings in the United States. We've heard of a few of them, and every single one of them was done by a young man. If you look at the statistics and the data about emotional and mental challenges in primary schools and high schools and universities, not only in the United States, but around the world, it's young boys and young men, much more than young women, that have been challenged psycho-emotionally in their lives. And over the last 75 years, we've been celebrating the insurgency of women, the power of women, the liberation of women. Here at Humanity Rising, we started with the voices of women. And for the first 10 days of Humanity Rising, we only had the voices of women. And over the past years, we've had mostly the voices of women. But starting today, we're going to hear from men. As it turns out, the men's movement has been active since the 1970s, coterminous with the rising women's movement, but the press and the media and the culture, rightly so, as thousands of years of patriarchy came to a close, have been supporting and urging and encouraging the liberation of women. But liberation is also something that men have had to engage. So since the beginning of the women's movement in modern times, there's also been a men's movement. Not so much noticed, but very vibrant, as diversified and as global as the women's movement. What Humanity Rising is doing, we've partnered with a beautiful man, Lion Goodman, who is the founder of the Clear Beliefs Institute and who has been involved in the men's movement. He's also a coach and a trainer who works extensively globally to train people in clear beliefs and creating On Purpose, which is the title of his book. And Lion Goodman and his institute and a consortium of men's organizations are partnering now with Humanity Rising. And so once a month, starting today, we're going to be hearing from men about men's issues and men's challenges and men's growing, cutting edge activities that's going to culminate between the 19th and the 21st of November in about 6 months' time. Coterminous around November 19th, which is International Men's Day. So Humanity Rising is broadening because it's humanity, with every support that we can give to women in their liberation, but now every support that we can give to men in their, should I say, our liberation at this extraordinary moment when patriarchy, which has gripped the world, east and west, north and south, for thousands of years, comes to an end. And an entirely new opportunity to shape what it means to be human. That is a great gift to our generation. And we want to seize it together. So Lion, I want to thank you for your partnership and your friendship. I want to thank you for your initiative with us to generate this Global Men's Summit. And I'm very excited to hear what you have to say at this moment of creation of this new impulse and partnership. So welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you, Jim. It's a real honor to be here. And our friendship that's budding and growing touches my heart deeply because we share so many of the same understandings and ideas about what's happening in humanity. You were describing very clearly that for thousands of years, patriarchy has ruled the planet. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that during all of those hierarchical top-down pyramids of power and wealth, the vast majority of men have been oppressed along with women and subjugated. They've been the fodder for endless wars. They put their bodies on the line to protect the interests of their leaders. They've been enslaved along with women and children, whether actual slavery of the past or wage slavery in the modern era. And what we've seen is that when men are dominated and disempowered, they have a tendency to express their whatever remaining personal power they have by dominating others. And the chain of domination and control has continued for those 5,000 years of the modern era. But also throughout that time, there have also been great men of heart and wisdom who did their best to live in integrity and who worked to become a good man, a better man, a virtuous man, and to meet the challenges of their time. And we all have always held that potential within us. So as you said, very clearly, a new vision of men and masculinity is being born based on the insights and the wisdom of those great teachers throughout history and our own inner knowing. And what we're calling Homo Novus, or new man, this is our attempt to broaden our reach because there are millions of men in men's groups working on themselves in the world, and we want billions to join us so that we can bring in a new era. And so we're going to be highlighting initiatives around the world through this series of panels to educate and awaken and heal men. And we're going to try to transform the vision of what a man is and who we can be and what we're capable of being and doing with this one life that we have to live for our culture, for our society, for our children, our grandchildren. So I'm very fortunate to have been in the men's movement for about 30 years, maybe 40. I don't know how old am I. Anyway, it's been many decades that I've been in this movement and worked with other great men to awaken ourselves and to heal ourselves and to become better men. So I'm really happy to be here with other men that I've worked with for decades. Those of us who've grown up in Western culture have been programmed to believe that either men are competitors or we're on the same side at war with other men. And what this culture has done to us is separated us from ourselves, from our wholeness, separated us from other men, separated us from women and children. And so we're trying to bring it back together. We're trying to heal that rift and reverse that programming through men's groups. And when we bring together men in cooperation and collaboration and mutual support, magic happens. The men on this panel are co-founders of the Tribe of Men, which is a volunteer nonprofit men's group that we established in 2004. We're based here in the Bay Area in San Francisco and surrounding territories, but we also have men in many other states and Washington, D.C. as well. And our purpose, the purpose that we created ourselves for, is to expand the consciousness and integrity of men, both individually and collectively, in service to all beings and to the planet. And our commitment is to engage in a process of self-inquiry and shared learning. And we work together to realize our potential as powerful and loving and effective men. And when we created our tribe, we developed a set of guiding principles as standards that we could measure ourselves against. And they're also ideals that we can grow toward. And these principles support and serve us to achieve our goals, both in our personal lives and in our professional lives. And so we have what we call challenge groups, because we're challenging ourselves and each other to live by these principles. You can find them on our website, tribeofmen.com. And I'm going to read just a few of them to give you a sense of what it is. What does a principle mean for the Tribe of Men? So here's a few of them. I embody masculine power. I take responsibility for my impact. I care for my body, my family, my community, and my planet. I'm committed to a never-ending journey of self-exploration. I seek to become a better and better instrument of my higher purpose. I give and receive love, exploring and honoring all of its aspects. I do work in the world that's a true expression of myself and my life's purpose. I express my power through service. So that'll give you a flavor of what we're about and what our commitment is. And we offer men's groups, a very powerful initiation process, and also training in management and leadership. We'll tell you more about that later. Now, we have listeners around the world and a small portion here on Zoom with us, some almost 100 people. So I want to find out about you. If you are in a men's group, or if you've been in a men's group in the past, put 1 in the chat box. We just want to kind of get a sense of how many of our compatriots are here. We also want to receive your questions and comments, so please write them in the chat box, and we'll get to as many as possible. Good, I'm seeing a number of 1s in there. Good, so we've got lots of men in men's groups, and we've also got lots of people who are not in men's groups. Well, I'm very happy to be here with my brothers and my co-founders of the Tribe of Men, Keith Marin, Michael Lipson, Steve Tennant, and Sergio Baroni. Each man's going to take about 5 minutes to discuss these ideas and principles that we're talking about, what it means to be a better man. And we're going to talk about the societal and cultural issues that we deal with. And after each panelist makes some introductory remarks, we'll move into a roundtable panel discussion. So again, if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box and we'll get to them. So I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Keith Marin. He is the founder of Leadership Pathways, an organizational development and leadership development firm. He's authored 6 books, including The Golden Flame, The Heart and Soul of Remarkable Leadership, and his newest book, The Art of Transformational Coaching. Keith received his doctorate from Harvard in 1985, where he studied the whole field of human and organizational development. In his work, he helps organizations achieve sustainable high performance and industry leadership. He's worked with executives from more than 400 companies, governmental and educational institutions. He's worked on huge technical and large-scale change efforts. And he's been involved with men's work for a lot of decades, like all of us. So Keith, I'd love to hear your conversation about the origins of this tribe and where you came from to begin it.
That's a lot to ask in a short amount of time. I'll I'll try to be brief. Thank you, Lion, and welcome everybody. So the tribe of men started with a workshop that Tim Kelly and I created called the Sword and Scepter, and some of you may be familiar with it. We created that workshop about 20 years ago, and for many years we delivered it once a year. The whole purpose of the workshop was to invite men to explore what does it mean to be a more healthy man, or find a more healthy form of masculine in men. And when Tim and I started to think about this workshop, we just talked about the many models that were available to us as men, and they were all kind of wanting. John Wayne was a model for many of us and for our parents in particular. He represents a strong macho type. And many of the other models of men available to us were more kind of disconnected, unavailable, or even buffoons. If you think about TV sitcoms and how men are often depicted there, they're often depicted as buffoon-like, not very strong, not very solid. And the women represent often more solid and healthy representations of the feminine. And we were just feeling a need to explore this question, and both for ourselves and for other men. So we started this workshop. It's a 4-day workshop. And we were wondering about what are the underlying forces that create who we are as men, again, seeking to find a more healthy masculine. It turns out this is not so easy. We're all laden with so many different imprints from our culture and from the models that exist before us. The men's movement, in some ways, has carried us forward. When I think about the men's movement, I think about, at the beginning in the 70s and 80s, it was really about men trying to find the softer side of themselves or becoming more sensitive. And I think that characterized me to a large extent. And then Robert Bly came along and his colleagues and said, well, what happened to the wild man? Where did he go? And so the men's movement started to take on a different color of embracing a stronger, more wild, more free man. And both being more sensitive and more free is very appealing. We were looking for something even beyond that, and still are. As I think about my own life, I'm looking to become a more conscious and integrated man that includes all of who I am. At any rate, so this workshop we created, and then one of the men said he wanted to be initiated into manhood. And he asked a bunch of us, 4 of us, Lion, Michael Glipson, myself, and Tim Kelly, to explore with him what that might look like. How might we initiate him into manhood? And as we explored it, we realized and learned that men don't get initiated into manhood in society. They get initiated into manhood into a particular tribe or a particular form. Like bar mitzvah is the initiation of a man into the Hebraic tribe. And so then we started to talk about, well, what kind of tribe might we want to create? We realized that to initiate him, we had to create a tribe. So let's talk about what kind of tribe would we want to be a part of. And almost all of us, I think, said, as I recall, I certainly remember saying, I've never really wanted to be part of a tribe. And I think the reason is that so many of the tribes that I've seen and so many of the communities that I've seen were left unsatisfying for me. So we explored what would be a satisfying form, and that's what gave rise to the tribe of men. So I'll stop there and just welcome other men adding their voice to the mix.
Thanks, Keith. Next, I'd like to introduce Michael Lipson. Michael is an executive coach and business consultant. He's consulted to more than 300 companies in Silicon Valley. And he's working at the intersection of business mastery and conscious leadership and personal growth and personal optimization. And He is one of the most alive men I know. He's an example of what he's teaching. He loves to work with organizations so that people can really do what they're here to do in a powerful and alive way. He's coached founders and executives and teams, served on boards. He's been an interim CEO. He's been an investment banker. He was a member of Paul Allen's think tank. He helped launch the first online music company and the first online multiplayer gaming business. He's also, in addition to being one of the co-founders in the Tribe of Men, he's also a partner at Every Man, which I hope he talks about. That's a worldwide men's community that's dedicated to improving emotional wellness and social connection for millions of men worldwide. So, Michael, give us your wisdom on this topic of becoming a better man and the social and cultural issues we deal with as evolving men.
Thanks, Lion. So when I'm asked, give us your wisdom, I immediately go into male program mode because I immediately am triggered into wanting to impress, wanting to win, wanting to be seen as something. And I think that's the condition. I think that's the condition of us guys, generally speaking, particularly in the US, where I grew up, particularly in a privileged upper middle class family. So just background wise, I worked my way into investment banking where there was a whole bunch of money being made. And as I woke up to what was true for me deeper inside, not just the conditioned, this is the life, this is the good life, Michael. That's that conditioning, make more money, have more power equals good life. I realized I didn't want to turn into the guys that were above me. They were all about the business deal. They were all about making money. And they were missing their kids growing up. And they were not as close to their wives. And I realized in reflection that the industry I was in was largely fueled by greed and by lust and by arrogance. And in reflection, that didn't really look like a life very well lived. And I had the good fortune to have enough resources to make a decision like that, to not be in survival mode and step off of that merry-go-round, so to speak, and change gears. And as I look back, it's absolutely the best thing I could have done for my life. And it's not what the world was telling me to do. And when I met Keith and Lion in a group, my first men's group ever, and then went to the Sword and Scepter, and then was asked, would you want to be in a tribe? Would you want to create a tribe? What would you stand for? It appeared to me to be a distinctive opportunity to rewrite the rules, to rewrite the code. And what does it look like for each of us, whether man or woman, to say, what are my values? What are the values I would most want in my family, in my friends, in my community, in my world, in my society? And that's pretty much what we did. I didn't realize it at the time, but in reflection, I got to create with others, co-create a container that allowed me to experiment with living with different values. And every group that has agreements, whether it's a men's group, a women's group, couples group, whatever it is, there's an opportunity to do that. And I will tell you that that absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. It changed the trajectory of my profession. It connected me into what I feel like I'm here to do. I like to use this stair step of in life, often we go from either pleasure to passion to purpose. And this connected me into purpose. And I've been doing it ever since, which is how I found my way to Every Man while doing all this coaching and doing all this, fairly high-powered business stuff, but always wanting to do it with heart and do it with values. And at Every Man, the view is, and I'm happy to talk more about this later, Lion, if you want, is that this should be accessible to every man, and that it enables us to shift what some of us call toxic masculinity, that programming that Keith was talking about. Suck it up, be strong, don't show a weakness, win at all costs. And what that does is that shuts us down. It shuts us down from vulnerability. It shuts us down from connection. It's really not the relationships we want with our wives or husbands or children. And ever since, I've been wanting more of that from men, and Every Man has found, I think, a methodology that's very approachable to the mainstream. Often this work is attracting men who have a level of comfort and consciousness and awareness. And I want this work to go to every man. And I think it changes society when every man has a chance to slow down, to actually feel what they're feeling, to connect from that true place, and then move forward from there. How's that, Lion?
Brilliant as always. Thank you. Thank you for your wisdom and heart. Okay, so sorry for stimulating your masculine, overpowering part. Or we're all struggling with this. We're all working to find this balance between the head and the heart and the gut. So that's what fullness is about. That's what wholeness is about. So thank you. Next, I want to introduce you to Steve Tennant. Steve consults with tech companies, leaders, helping them grow their business by transforming their customer experiences and also eliminating customer suffering, which is a good idea in every business. He also helps develop new products and services to accelerate company growth. And he says that he especially loves working with clients that are crazy enough to think that they can improve the world. And I think we are all in that category. He's worked with over 20 startups, more than 20 large organizations, including Microsoft, Ford, Cisco, and Zendesk. He began his consulting career at Anderson Consulting. He held several executive roles at PeopleSoft. And Steve has one of the most organized minds I've ever met. And he's also an amazing husband and father. So Steve talked to us about being a better man and especially the social and cultural issues that we deal with.
Thank you, Lion. It's great to be here. And I've loved hearing from Keith and Michael. I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I guess I would put myself alongside everybody else in the audience just trying to figure this out. Whether it's what's going on in Minneapolis, thanks for your comments, Jim, or the attacks on the Capitol, the pandemic, voting rights, feminism and women's rights, the climate crisis, even how vaccines are getting distributed globally and what that means for variants in the pandemic. There's a lot of work to be done, and for me, sometimes it seems overwhelming. Like, how can I have an impact on any of this stuff that's going on in the world? So, as I reflected on this talk, I thought I would just share three things that have transformed me as a result of being in the tribe. And these three things that have transformed me are, one's at the personal level, one's at the organizational level, and one's at the societal level. So these to me are kind of also the three levers that I have to have an impact in the world. So at the personal level, for me, one of the epiphanies that I had as a parent, I read in a parenting book when I brought my daughter into the world 28 years ago now, that she would be likely to base her future relationships and how she saw her own self-esteem in part based on how I treated her as a dad, and that I had a huge role in shaping that for her, and that my job wasn't just to be a provider, but to help to create that self-esteem. And 3 years later, when I had my first son, I read that my son, I turned out I had two sons eventually, but at that time with my first son, that my sons would follow my actions more than what I said. And so the epiphany that I had was that I actually needed to be who I wanted my children to become. So, instead of being the parent who's screaming and yelling at their kids to swim faster at the swim meet, if swimming's so goddamn important, maybe I should start swimming because I don't do it at all. And maybe I should, go swim every day at 8 a.m. like my kids are, and be that model instead of just telling them what to do. I never went swimming. Decided swimming wasn't actually that important. Wasn't going to dictate whether my kids got into college when they were 7 and 8 years old. So I, but I needed to show my daughter, to to follow what she wanted to do with her life. I needed to teach my sons how to express their feelings and frustrations, to resolve conflicts, to collaborate. So the tribe taught me the importance of finding my own purpose and focusing on my kids and helping them find their purpose. And so, now my kids are all the same, but they're also very different and off on their own paths. One is a social worker, another is works in Hollywood and in the film industry. Another one is just finishing his senior year. He's going to be an elementary school teacher. So they're all leaders and all trying to have impact in the world in their own way. So that's the first story. The second one is at the organizational level. One of the things that the tribe turned me on to was a way of collaboration, collaborating together to solve problems. And so the epiphany here was that, organizations will resist the solutions that they did not create themselves. In my work in the tribe, we had meetings where, to figure out how we were going to operate, we used a different leadership style. And there's a process called the collaborative operating system, as well as facilitation skills that I learned working with the tribe, which have transformed how I do consulting. Where before, in my prior life, I was paid to be the smartest consultant in the room, or at least part of a team of smart consultants. We would develop the solution, we'd do the research, we'd say, here's what the client needs to do, foist our solution on the clients, who would ultimately reject or not fully embrace or adopt that solution because they weren't part of creating it. And so today, instead of doing that, I facilitate groups through transformational processes where they come up with their own solutions, using outside experts along the way to get the best thinking, but support them through a transformational change process. And it's exciting for them. They become the leaders of creating the change in their organizations that they want to have. And it's much more effective and actually a lot more fun. So in those circumstances, my role is to help organizations find their own solutions. And that's a direct result of my work with the tribe. The third epiphany that I learned, this is now at the societal level, and about becoming an activist. In Nelson Mandela's autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom, he talks about how our freedom cannot be complete while others in the world are not free. Our freedom can't be complete while others in the world are not free. And so people like us have a responsibility to speak for those who cannot, to listen, to be empathetic, to hear what the needs are of the disenfranchised and elevate them. So there's a longer story here. Both my sons were in Boy Scouts. There was a 17-year-old a mile down the road who got kicked out of the Boy Scouts because he was gay. And through the media and through a grassroots campaign, we banded together as a community and actually helped to change that policy. And so I was like, wow, that's actually kind of cool when you can change a 100-year-old organization. And now I'm more involved in becoming more of an activist in other contexts too, getting the right leaders in place, making sure that if meetings don't have women or people of color, if we're not hiring the right people. Many executive teams give lip service to this, but it's super important in our positions to create the equality that we need in the world. So, and to hold those who are in power accountable. So those are my three thoughts that I needed to become who I wanted my children to become and not just talk about it, which has kicked my ass a lot. And that my role is to help organizations find their own solutions, and that I need to listen and elevate and empower the disenfranchised.
Thank you, Steve. Great to have you here as well. Our fourth guest speaker is Sergio Baroni. Sergio is a licensed psychotherapist and life coach. He practices with individuals and couples around the world, and he's working to help his clients heal their core wounds and guide them toward greater empowerment and happiness and fulfillment. He's the co-author of Ready, Set, Live, and also a contributor to the New York Times bestselling book, Happy for No Reason. He uses transformational psychotherapy and hypnotherapy to clear clients' obstacles and open them to profound well-being. He's also the creator of Authentic Self-Love Coaching, which helps his clients achieve joy and inner peace. And he's been counseling and mentoring young men for many, many years. So Sergio is one of the most heartful people I know. So Sergio, share your heartful wisdom about our role as men and the challenges we face about becoming whole and healed.
Thank you, Lion. I'm so grateful to be here today with all of you. And I want to say ciao to anyone in Italy. I'm originally Italian, came to America at 10 years old, following my mother's inspiration, having a father that was just very there, present, supporting her vision to bring the family here, and grew up in a working class family in Southern California during my teenage years. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about my background. There was such, for me, a sense of alienation when in leaving a heart-based culture like Italy, arriving in Southern California, and immediately feeling a sense of emptiness and alienation, a sense of not belonging. And for many years, that feeling just kind of lingering with me and kind of feeling quite lost. And at the time I was very well connected, very, very sort of inspired by my mother, closer to her in a way than my father, who was a really good guy, but really didn't know how to handle his anger, was constantly just losing it. And so I grew up not wanting to be like my father. So as a young man, wound up being a very soft, feminine kind of spiritual guy. And that was my orientation for quite some time, until having met an amazing, empowered woman, falling in love with her, she compelled me to seek out men's work. That was about 20 years ago. And I found first the Mankind Project, got initiated through them, and then eventually found my way to the Tribe of Men. And to me, the transformation that I got to witness in my life, in my relationship, not just to my own masculine essence, my inner fire, my ability to stand for something that it really meant a lot to me, and not back away or not hide. Those were very, very important things for me at the time. And also what men's work taught me was the ability to trust men again in a way that I couldn't have, given that I couldn't fully trust my father. And I received so many wonderful gifts of integrating both. I didn't have to let go of anything of my feminine nature. I continued to embrace my feminine side, which serves me in my healing work, in my therapeutic work very much. But at the same time, integrating more of my masculine parts to be able to feel that sense of like I could be my whole self. And in the tribe, I got to experience a sense of the guiding principles, that the rigorousness of the self-assessment process that every man gets to go through, the opportunity to be guided and mentored by someone, by another man, the process of coming through that experience and discovering one's shadow and dealing with it, recognizing greater degrees of accountability with one's shadow, always continually seeking greater and greater awakening to both the light and the shadow aspects of ourselves. All these things have been just profoundly invaluable in my life, and I brought a lot of those ideas and principles into my work with men and women, young men, and so forth. So the experience of being now sort of able to say bring a lot of the dimensions of this work, especially to the young men I work with. I feel constantly inspired. I feel constantly grateful that I get to pass it on. I get to pass on the experience of, the richness of being with young men and young women too, for that matter, where we can experience more of that experience of feeling seen to our core for the essential self that we are, the authentic self that we are, that obviously transcends on one level gender, but at the same time can also help us discover what it means to be a young man at this time, what it means to be alive at this time, and also bring in an understanding of the evolutionary forces that are so much part of what's driving humanity and what we need to embrace, including the sense of the unknown. One of the greatest things I learned from the tribe of men was the fact that it's okay. It's not shameful to recognize one's ignorance or one's not knowing, to be able to be in the unknown, the big and murky, as we call it in the tribe, to be able to recognize that and to stay open in what I would call the we space, the ability to listen to one another and to arrive at greater and greater degrees of integrated meaning about what's really going on, recognizing that no one of us has the whole picture. We all need one another to complete what it means to be human, and also what it means to be in community, what it means to be in society, and what it means to be in the world. So discovering that sense of the human mosaic. And those are all understandings, realizations, and things that I work with every day. And I thank the tribe so much for that support.
Thank you, Sergio. And thank you to each of you. I want to, we're going to break into the more panel discussion now. And I want to start with the big elephant in the room. Jim talked about it, toxic masculinity, patriarchy, privilege. And in the face of the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter and violence against Asians, it makes people think that white men like us are toxic or racist or patriarchal as our native state. So I want to ask, do you see any toxic masculinity or patriarchal tendencies in yourself? And do you think this is inborn? Is it part of our genes, or is it learned behavior? So Keith, I'd like you to begin.
Gosh, it's of course a little of both, nature and nurture. And yes, I'd have to admit that I do see it in me. I think the effort to search for it and recognize it is part of my growth, and I can feel the desires on my part to control. I can even see it as I make comments in the chat to the other panelists. And that control tendency feels very strong in me. My father was very, very controlling. And I think what I did in response was not to shrink, but to get equally controlling, and unconsciously so. And so that patriarchy is in me. The challenge for me is to learn how to refine it and recognize that there are so many other parts of me as well, so it doesn't run me. And I'd say it has to some extent, and less so as I get older. I'll give the other panelists a chance to share their thoughts about that too, but thank you. That's a beautiful question.
Thanks, Keith. Who else would like to respond? Just unmute yourself and dive in.
All right, I'll jump in. I'll tell you that the question, immediately I tune into what I feel, and I feel uncomfortable. And the uncomfortable is telling me that, yeah, I'm in this syndrome. Not only am I kind of programmed in the syndrome, but I feel shame about it. And the feeling of shame about it is, in my opinion, the entry point to changing it. I notice that, and I've had this conversation with myself a lot. I notice that when it's dark at night in a city, I feel more on alert if in the alley there's people of color than white people, and I'm not proud of that. And admitting it kind of sets me free in a way. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't relieve the shame or discomfort, but allows me to start working with it. And I notice that I have a bunch of judgment that's programmed, and over time, it's shifting. So I think the work we're doing helps me be with it and helps me shift it. And as Steve Tennant said, helps us model it for our children and younger generations and so forth. And I think being in the US makes it amplified, the challenge. I think we're specialists at this, which I'm not proud of.
Yeah, I found the same thing to be true in me, that I've looked at my own racism and seen it there. I was an early feminist because my girlfriends at the time were feminists. So I took on the ideals of feminism. And it took me a long time to find out that they were ideals I had taken on. They weren't in me. And I had to really dig much deeper in myself to find my truth rather than just what would look good. And this men's work has helped over these decades of really looking deep inside to find the truth of me. And some of it's not very pleasant, as you said. Who else would like to join in?
Hey, Lion, I just want to share one quick story. It was when I asked my high school son, does your friend so-and-so have a girlfriend? And he looked at me and he said, why would you assume it was a girlfriend and not a boyfriend? And that was like, oh my God, I'm so programmed. And I think our generation is. So I think that's how endemic it is for us. All right, I'll let the next guy speak.
I'd like to just jump in. From my own perspective, I know I grew up with a fear of the potential of my, of turning into the kind of man that would be, in a way, like my father, capable of raging and losing control. And so the fear of that was what defined a lot of my self-suppression and suppressing that inner fire, which is also where my passion was. And as I started reclaiming my inner fire and my passion, and then in my work as a psychologist, learning about, for example, that we all have a reptilian brain, and that inner reptile part of us is inherently afraid, aggressive, territorial, and truly not to be trusted. That part of us, the higher mind, the higher intelligence within us needs to constantly be on vigilance and alert to that, for that part of us, and learning how to self-regulate is key. And I think that, so maybe as men learning now that we no longer have permission from society to, as before, to just give free rein to some of those parts of ourselves, I think we still need to constantly be vigilant to how that reptilian mind can still project onto the world all kinds of things that that the wiser, more intelligent part of us could see through.
Thanks, Sergio. Steve, did you want to add your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think specifically on patriarchy, I think there is some inherent nature, eliminating patriarchy requires looking both at the business world, the world of production, as well as our home lives and reproduction, how we bring little people into this world. And to me, the question is, how can men and women both have careers and be equally responsible for raising their children, or whatever it is that they want to do in their life? And as you think back, in the over history, this wasn't possible when physical strength was required to fight off the warring tribes or to bring back the deer from the hunt. You needed that physical strength, and it created these gender roles. But if you had a blank sheet of paper and we're designing for today, what solution would you create? And Sergio raised some good points. I think men are the worst at perpetuating these stereotypes, some of which have come from that long lineage of not showing weakness, not showing feelings, responding to conflict with violence. And for many men, they really don't have a strong sense of how to express their ideas, without that. So I am in support of men becoming feminists or more feminist, and in doing so, I don't think they lose their masculinity by uplifting others. I don't think it makes us worse or diminishes our power. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
Brilliant, thank you. We've been living with this dominance model, dominance and control, master, commander, top-down hierarchy. And someone in the chat mentioned the partnership model, which is Rihanna Eisler has talked about that quite a bit. So we are, as men in our marriages, we are looking at more partnership. In business, we're looking at partnership and collaboration rather than command and control. So how has your work with men and men's groups and self-development informed your own work and your own practice, and especially your work with clients? So who'd like to begin?
So I'll take that. I'll jump in. I think, like I was saying before, the men's work allowed me to, first of all, have a sense that in order for me to show up with wholeness, in order for me to be able to be with someone and recognize their wholeness, I have to constantly work on integrating my three centers of intelligence: my belly, my heart, and my head. And so as a man, dropping down from my head into my heart, into my belly, is something that is invaluable. And I learned that through my work with the tribe. So when I'm with someone and inviting them to connect with their intuitive intelligence in their head, to connect with the passion that lives in their heart, their deep yearning to become who they're meant to be, or their feeling of what's alive in them, the feeling of what their authentic self is yearning for, that those kinds of practices, the practices of embodiment, become central to how then a person starts feeling seen and heard and welcome to become more and more that their true self, their more authentic self. So I'll leave it there.
I noticed Sergio and I are in the same challenge group, and so I've gotten to know him well. I noticed that as I've gotten older and more mature, I'm more interested in questions than answers. And I spent a whole life, wanting to be smarter and studying to become smarter than the average bear. And as I've matured, like you, I think just being more inquisitive, wondering, and deepening for myself and others is far more appealing. And not so easy, though. The conditioning or the practice of developing my mind is so strong that if I'm on automatic, it will answer anything at any time. So I love the spirit of inquiry, and part of my experience with these other men is we're all engaged together in that. So your words are really beautiful to me.
Well, let's see, Michael, talk about how the men's work has informed your work with startups and tech companies.
Yeah, thanks. So for me, everything has a balance. There's kind of a yin yang, there's a duality. So there's what happened inside me and then what happens outside me. And the men's work transformed a lot around what happens inside me. I got in touch with what I was talking about earlier, my values, what's really true, what's deep, or purpose, or things that this is who Michael really is, just not the conditioned Michael. And not only did I get in touch with it, Lion, but I found myself feeling safer and safer in being that. It was almost like I was holding up, I was kind of tensing my muscles through the world, being somebody that I was supposed to. And I found my way into relaxing myself into being who I am. And with that are words like grace and flow and ease. But there's also a certain kind of phenomena that the world responds, and it responds very positively. So that's what was going on inside. How it looked on the video camera of comparing working with a CEO 20 years ago and working with a CEO now is very different. I'm very receptive and available now, where I was more, and I'll call it an narcissistic ego battle, where in the old days, I wanted to prove my worth and be seen as smart. And most of those CEOs and business execs tend to be hard drivers. And that's a skill set that's valuable, but it comes at a cost. So what shows up now for me is listening to whomever I'm working with, reading what feels like it's that conditioned, tensed, I got to do this versus what's underneath it, and creating the space and the safety and the slowing downness so that they can access that and start making decisions and actions from that place. And then when that happens, it can shock a lot of the organization, or at least make them wonder. I find myself in curiosity mode a lot, and really wonder mode, and then coaching mode of, now that you're checking into that, let's think about how that would land best in the outside world. Just like the journey I had. I shifted from the inside, and now I have it land best on the outside. And I could talk about this for an hour. It really excites me. It's fascinating. And I think that it not only applies to business, but all those business folks, and they're not all men, they're women too that I'm coaching. They then bring this back to their home, and it shows up in their home, it shows up in their communities, it shows up in their friendships. So it goes way beyond the business environment, this work.
Thank you. And in my life, I've always looked within. That's been the first place I look, and learned from really 40 years of self-development work. So men's work was just one aspect of that looking within place. You know, what the unexamined life is not worth living. I think that was Socrates. And so when you begin looking within, you can start dropping the masks. There's a wonderful movie that we hope to have for our summit called The Mask You Live In. And it's about young men and how they begin taking on masks at a very young age, recognizing that they can't have their feelings. I remember, feeling like a crybaby in elementary school because I cried easily, and it was very shameful, right? So I had to stop that. I had to put on a kind of covering, a shield to protect other people from looking at me and demeaning me, because I was a sensitive boy. And we almost all men, take on those masks based on the social and cultural norms, and we shame each other in order to prevent each other. Don't be a sissy boy, all those kinds of comments. So it is built into the culture, and we're trying to break out of that deep programming so that we can become ourselves, more fully ourselves. Someone in the chat box mentioned equality between men and women. I think it's important to avoid the idea that equality equals sameness. We're not the same. We're each an incredibly unique individual. And in oneness, we can see that we are all one, and we need every single part of us to be one and to be our best, sort of like our cells. Our cells are all different, but they're all part of a master system. So I want to emphasize our uniqueness, each individual's uniqueness, and let that shine and support it. So in my work in coaching, I'm always looking for the cause of what's in the way. So by finding the cause and changing it at the causal level, then everything else can change. The lens you look through your beliefs can change, and then you can become more yourself. So that's my own penchant. Steve, did you want to talk about how men's work has influenced your work with your clients?
Well, I think I talked about that earlier. It's had a dramatic effect, and I agree with what both Michael and Sergio were saying. I feel like instead of focusing so much on the solution, as a result of sitting in these challenge groups and seeing how everybody, and I imagine if there were women's challenge groups, it would be the same. We all have a pile of baggage that we're dealing with in our lives, the imprints that our parents put on us, the societal pressure, there are a list of issues that we're all dealing with, and those are frequently invisible in a business setting. But to me, it creates an opportunity to show some empathy and to really listen deeply and try to understand the individual leaders that I'm working with, and really understand what they're up against and how I can truly support them in the same way that I would in a relationship with my wife or my kids or my mom. How can I be supportive to them, and what's their vision, and how can I help make that happen? So anyway, that's just a couple thoughts that come to mind.
You know, when I listen to everybody, I'm impressed with. I think something that I care about deeply myself, but we're all pretty smart and know a lot, and early on in our careers, what we knew mattered. But I think I'm impressed with each man's state of being, and your groundedness and your centeredness, and I know for myself that it's my state of being that matters way more. You know, can I create a space and a container with my clients to invite them to deepen and explore? In order to do that, my state of being has to be tuned. So, you know, the beginning of this whole session with a little meditation is a way of reminding ourselves as well as attuning to a deeper place from which to work. And I just love hearing you all talk about this.
Thanks, Keith. Someone asked about our challenge groups. Steve, I think you are the best person to talk about how the tribe is structured and what we offer to men.
Sure. I do sit on the leadership ring. There's no chief in the tribe that runs the tribe, but there's a group of us that are collaboratively running this nonprofit. There's really 3 different experiences, I would say, that men can have. Many men come in joining a challenge group, either a landed challenge group that's in a specific geography, or now with the pandemic, everything being over Zoom, we also have virtual challenge groups. And you commit to be in a group indefinitely, you know, and show up at least 10 out of 12 months out of the year. And that creates this environment of showing up every month and working on yourself. Every group's a little bit different, but our group reads the principles at the beginning of each meeting, and I use that to kind of attune myself. Where am I off? What are the areas I might want to work on? Anyway, that's a challenge group. Second is the initiation process, where I think Sergio was describing going through a self-assessment and figuring out if you could change one thing in your life, what would it be? If you had 3 magic beans, what would you want to have be different in your life? So that initiation process has been on hiatus during the pandemic, but certainly by next year, we'll be running that again. The third layer of the layer cake is learning facilitation and leadership skills. So what does it take to facilitate a challenge group? Keith actually runs a facilitation ring that teaches those facilitation skills, which has been awesome. And then in the leadership ring, in addition to running the tribe, we're bringing conscious leadership skills so that men can practice learning leadership and in a safe environment, running things in the tribe, whether it's another ring or creating a new initiative, and then getting feedback from other men on their leadership skills. So those are the different areas. There's two other things that I wanted to mention. One is that we do monthly calls, sometimes depending on the topic, both for men and women. And those monthly calls you can find out about on our website. Tomorrow night, for example, we're doing a call. It's part 2 of the Enneagram. We did part 1 a month ago, and there's maybe 50 people that show up on these calls. We've had other calls. Lion and his partner Krista did one on relationships. We've had calls on racism, on the election, different topics. I think after the Enneagram, a month from now, we're doing one on conscious communication, kind of taking the nonviolent communication playbook and breaking that down and raising our awareness there. So anyway, the monthly tribe community calls, we call them, you can sign up for on our website. And then the last one is for men who may not yet be ready to commit to a challenge group, but just want to taste. There is a drop-in group also where you can come in for one meeting and experiment with that. And I know with Michael Lipson, Everyman has a similar sort of meeting. Some of these are around themes and some of them are just show up and let's talk about what you want to work on. So anyway, those are kind of the different entry points. It's all on the tribeofmen.com website.
I want to talk about the initiation process because I think it's so unique. When we were forming the tribe, we looked at how do you initiate men, as Keith was talking about, how do you initiate men into manhood when they're already men? And we realized that most tribal peoples around the world had an initiation process to turn the boys into men, to bring them into the world of manhood. But we were already in the world of manhood, and we didn't have a culture, a tribal culture or history where everybody was the same because everybody's different. And so we asked the question, how can we, what kind of initiation process can we create that's unique to each man, because each man is unique, but yet is challenging the same way that tribal people challenge their young boys to become men. And so we created this amazing process where each man does a very deep self-assessment, written like a 20-page self-assessment, and basically comes up with, these are my real issues in my life. And this is where I could be challenged. And then a group of tribesmen crafts a unique challenge for that man. And they have 2 to 3 months to fulfill that challenge. And then they come back in front of that group of men and say, here's the result of me working on this particular aspect of myself. And if they're successful, they get initiated into the tribe. And if they're not, if they aren't successful, if they haven't really reached the peak of that process, if they haven't put their full effort into it, they're asked to come back and do it again. So that is a really interesting combination of unique challenging for each particular man, and yet a process that allows men to come in to the circle of tribesmen. Keith, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just briefly. Part of the reason why we did that is that the challenge to become a man, in a sense, or to become a more fully realized man, isn't a physical challenge. It was in yesteryear. Go out and kill the lion, kill the bear. Sorry, lion, I didn't mean to imply.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, but go off and slay that dragon. And so in that sense, the physical challenge can be universal. But really, if what we're about is transforming who we are to become a more full, whole sense of who we are, then it's not a physical challenge. It's a psycho-spiritual challenge. And what we face, the dragons that we face are internal. And so how do we slay our internal dragons to become more of who we are is really the challenge. And that's just unique to each person. And that's finding that challenge is a ton of fun, but that's the reason why we do it, apply it so uniquely to each person. And we need to get to know that person in order to do that well.
Yeah, thank you. Jim, I want to bring you back in and see if there are questions from the audience that we can be challenged by.
Well, thank you, Lion, and thank you all. What a splendid conversation. As you probably have seen, the chat box has been rather animated, mostly with just comments and affirmations on what you're bringing to the surface. One of the questions was around the relationship between the men and women's liberation. There was one comment on, the male ego and women's intuition as two kind of, in some ways, stereotypic but archetypal formulations of the difference between men and women, and just wondering whether, under current circumstances, that's all blending. And I think that's a very interesting area to explore, where you could have a whole session on it, actually, because in addition to women's liberation and men's liberation, there's gender liberation, and there's sexual liberation, and there's gender fluidity and sexual fluidity, and trans and bi and pan and intersex, and so what we're really witnessing in our time, in our generation, is literally an explosive reorientation of quite literally what it means to be human at this moment, as we begin to shape the beginnings of a future beyond the strictures of a patriarchal, colonial, oppressive, missionary position kind of world. So I think that would be worth people's comments on Lion, because I think it opens up at least a couple future sessions that we could very usefully deal with as we move down the road.
Thank you for that. And I want to emphasize that whenever there's this kind of opening and flowering and changing, there's also a counterforce of the people who are afraid of change and want to bring it back into a strictured, same old, traditional mode. And it's like when a caterpillar is turning into the butterfly, the new cells, the imaginal cells, are blossoming, and the caterpillar's immune system starts attacking them because it's a foreign object. And eventually the imaginal cells take over and turn the caterpillar into mush, which then restructures into a butterfly. So we are in this process of seeing both the flowering of and the breaking of all those strictures, and also the counter force of people trying to stop it from happening. It's like, let's stop change. Let's go back to the way it was. So I don't want to think about these issues. I don't want to think about trans people. I don't want to think about the open sexuality. This is dangerous. So it's dangerous to that fixed mindset. And we're seeing a lot of backlash. Gentlemen who'd like to jump in.
I just want to jump in with another concept that hasn't been talked about much, and it's just so important. What's the woman's role or possibility or opportunity in all this? And it looks really different when a men's group is operating as just men, or if there are women witnessing it or interacting with it. And I'm just throwing that out there to provoke it. At every man, we have a few experiences, so there's a little plug in this too. We have a few experiences that are open to the public. We have these global community calls on Tuesday night, and we have some drop-in groups where any guys can go and do a drop-in group for free and check it out and so forth. We intentionally have one of those global calls per month include women, and then check out how we respond differently as a woman. And once in the Tribe of Men, I was the first guy to bring in a woman in a program, and just notice how different that is. And I appreciate that there's a lot of women on this call, and they're saying, what can we do? And I just think that that's as valuable and critical a conversation to have as the one we're having here.
I just want to mention that woman that you brought in was the first woman to present to the tribe. I married her So thank you for for bringing her in.
Must have been a pretty good presentation.
It was very
There was a race. There were about 20 men that wanted to marry her, and Lion.
I won the race.
That's right. Way to go.
His physical prowess dominated.
Yes.
Well, and everybody in the conversation, and I see in the chat, we get it, but let's make it explicit that we all have both of these energies, poles, genders, whatever you want to call them, that they're in both of us, and we're balancing that and we're managing that. And our feminine comes out more as guys when our newborn shows up, and the masculine comes out more in women when the house is on fire. And that is our balance, and how we do that dance together. I saw another question about how does relational work differ than individual work, and it gets really rich when we add that other element to it, and that's the reality. So we can do our work in isolation, and it's really great. One of the designs of the tribe and other men's work is it's a safe container, it's a petri dish, it's a test tube. You can stretch yourself with more safety. You can actually push yourself beyond what might be comfortable pushing in your marriage or in the outside world, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the training ground. But then we bring it up a notch, and we pull in our partners, we pull in the other gender, and that's really where the sparks start getting interesting.
I also want to, excuse me, I also want to add that if the focus is more and more on our conscious evolution as a species, given the huge complex problems that we face, then there's ways that, yes, we need to integrate the masculine and feminine perspectives, or we need to come together as women and men and move away from competitive striving and build a more and more collaborative type of movement, which includes everyone. So I think that the whole theme of in the tribe, that we look for ways to create both people becoming more and more truly themselves authentically, and at the same time, people becoming ever more capable of showing up in collaboratively, creating a more and more intelligent, conscious we space experience. In fact, in our group, we've actually been exploring with the theme of how to create a more intelligent field among us all, so that instead of just, say, each person thinking about how they're going to contribute to a conversation or exploration, we're actually all tuning into the field of consciousness that we're all enlivening, and then we are listening from into the field and trying to then decipher, download what's next, what's needed, what's alive, what's most pertinent at this time. And I think that for a lot of us, that's the edge right now. That goes beyond anything related to identity, and it's just about the fact that we are all operating as conscious beings first, and that we all need to explore and expand what consciousness is and the qualities of consciousness that we are capable of presencing, which are needed right now.
Beautiful. Jim, was there another question you want to throw out into the basketball court here?
Well, I think in light of the time, it might be good for each of you to just make a closing statement. There's been a number of chats from women really appreciating this, and also acknowledging that they too interact differently when it's all women together, and then when a man comes in or there's men involved. And I think all of us are very conscious of gender when it's enclosed and homogenous, and when it becomes mixed with others. We're hypersensitive to when women show up for men and when men show up for women, and that's part of the dance, of course, but also part of the challenge as we move forward. But I would love to have just some final comments from each of you, and then Lion, if you could make a final summary, I think that's good for this session.
Great. Keith, would you begin?
Yeah. What comes to mind for me is just I have miles to go before I sleep. And it's just a journey that never ends. So as much as I am aware of how far I've come and grown and worked on myself, I think I have a lot to learn. I can feel the edges of my own patriarchy slipping through consciously and well, unconsciously I can feel it, but often miss it. And I'm just grateful to be among men who share that spirit of we have much to learn. I have much to learn.
It's a beautiful and humble admission. You know, they say the longest journey for a man is the 18 inches between his head and his heart. And then, of course, you have to go further to the gut. So, Sergio, would you go next?
Well, I think that the fact that we're having this quality of conversation and that there's such an interest in how men can better grow, evolve, come together, and shape ourselves in a way that we're able to actually show up as beacons of love, beacons of truth, beacons of authentic presence, rather than people that are either threatening or essentially trying to be competitive in the world. We need to create a more collaborative, a more even playing field throughout our society, so that people that have been subjugated, people that have been oppressed, can have their voices heard and can be allowed to thrive as well. So I'm grateful that I get to be part of this time. I'm alive at this time. What an amazing time to be alive and to see what's happening.
Beautiful. Thank you. Steve.
So this weekend, I bought 5 decks of cards. There's a Indiegogo campaign, one of these crowdsourced campaigns that came across in my email, and it relates very much to this patriarchy discussion. In a deck of cards, like, why is the king worth more than the queen? Why are all these people in the deck white? So there's a young girl who has created a new deck of cards, and it's a great illustration to me of how even this is so pervasive and insidious, but just the little things that we can do to help cultivate awareness. I'm giving cards to my son so he can take it into an elementary school classroom, and to my daughter who can work in her social work with the youth that she's working with there. And, who knows where these ripples go to, but anyway, it doesn't always have to be a massive activism campaign. Let's all just work to create the ripples. And if we get more folks involved, we can have a big change.
Why are they 2 men and 1 woman among the 3 out of the 4 pictures?
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to search for it, you take the word queen and add a G on the end of it. Queen is the name of the card deck. It's on Indiegogo, and I have no involvement with them, but I just thought it was super cool that this young woman was doing this. So check it out.
It is cool. And let's see, who did I not call on? Steve, I think you're next, or Michael. Who did not speak?
Steve
Michael.
just went, so I'll go and I'll wrap this up. I think one of the things that strikes me is how when we do our work, we discover what really matters to us, and then we can go deeper into that. And I'm witnessing that as I listen to the panelists. Like, what's the portal into making a better world or being more satisfied in the contribution you make? And it's sort of a wonder that we're all in the same tribe, and we're finding our different portals, our different pathways, and how beautifully overlapping or integrated or in the same direction it goes. And that's that incredible time in the world that's happening around us. I'll also say that I'm really inspired by younger generations. I make it a point of making friends with people half my age and younger. And a reminder that there's so much to learn, that us old, long in the tooth people, that go young, and there's so much inspiration and energy. And that path that I found that really speaks to me around men's work is the observation and belief that men generally are programmed in two very detrimental ways. One way is a disconnection from our feelings, and that's that suck it up, be strong pattern. And that the body knows more than anything, really, in my opinion. So connecting to our feelings is a superpower that we have this conditioned belief is actually a weakness. So that's one. And the second is we're pretty isolated. Guys lack community of heart, community of substance. It's very hard to move positively without support and without that community. So that's really what my interest is the most. That's kind of my spearhead. Those two things, feeling your feelings and connecting from a deep place so you create community and brotherhood and sisterhood in a more powerful, deeper way. Thanks for listening to us all.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone being here to support this movement. I mean, we are all wanting a better world, and we want a world that is good and healthy for our children. We want to save the planet. There is a lot of work to be done. And in the coming panels, we are going to be bringing in people from other countries, other organizations, and really looking at the initiatives that are worldwide. We're here on the West Coast of California, so maybe we're leading the way, but we know that there's lots of initiatives around the world where this movement of moving men from a patriarchal, masculine is better mindset over to this oneness and recognition that we're all needed, everyone is needed, and that with tolerance and with support, everybody can shine. Everyone has that human ability to shine like a star. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity, this platform. Thank you, Jim, for providing it so that we can grow together as men, as women, as people of other genders as well, of all colors, of all stripes, of all professions. We all have this work to do. We are headed toward a greater world if we can save the one we've got. And our own inner development is a key to that shift. So that's why we're here. That's why we're sharing. We're aiming toward that Global Men's Summit coming up in November. And so you'll see us back about monthly with different panels, different participants, different topics, always focused on how do we become better and make a better world. So I'm really grateful for you having us, Jim. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lion, and Steve, Michael, Sergio, and Keith. What a magnificent exposition today. It's been so heartwarming, and I want to thank all the support that particularly the women have given to us during the course of this session, because if any one of us liberates ourselves, everyone is liberated. And it just has been striking me at the risk of oversimplification, but sometimes these generalizations can be helpful. I mean, if you think about it, the liberation of women has been sort of from the interior to the exterior, because their task in their liberation was really to smash through the glass ceiling and seize power in the world in an observable, tangible way. We're seeing the first woman as vice president of the United States. In sports, women are demanding equal facilities and equal pay and equal promotion on the media. So they've really been exerting themselves palpably in the real world of money, power, entertainment, and culture. Men who were already standing on top of the glass ceiling have really, in a fundamental way, and I've just came to me as I observed the discourse over this last hour, have really had an interior journey. As you said, Lion, that longest distance is between the head and the heart. And it's been so illuminating and inspiring to me to see, grown, powerful men really exploring with exquisite humility and openness and vulnerability the feelings that were denied them for millennia, as they were forced into their own kind of servitude within the strictures of patriarchy. And as we move into the future and as we begin to give shape to this Global Men's Summit, eventually in November, we really want to include women as part of this conversation. We want to include men from around the world in different cultures and ethnicities, because all of us have been shape-shifting through this veritable human revolution in very different and multifaceted ways. So today we only started the conversation, but what a start. I've loved it, and thank you all for it. And Lion, your mastery at just holding the group together and guiding it, it's going to be a great adventure working with you over the next months as we give shape to this summit. So thank you all. And then tomorrow, everyone, we're going to be taking up the issue of saging, the issue of eldering. The populations in North America, Europe, and Japan, principally, are seeing populations that are getting older and older. Much of the world in Latin America and Africa and Asia is getting younger and younger. So we're going to take a look at the elders, the boomers, the people that came of age in the 1960s, 1970s, who are now entering into their elderhood after the tumultuous 50, 70 years, 80 years that we have been on this planet. So there will be a very interesting and diverse panel talking about what it means to be an elder in our rapidly changing, ever younger world. So that's tomorrow on Humanity Rising. But thank you, everyone. And by the way, if anyone has burning issues, I urge you all to go onto our Ubiverse, our social platform where you can blog, you can put videos, you can comment, you can write op-eds. We'd love to hear from any of you who have strong feelings about the issues that we're raising around men and women through Humanity Rising. So we appreciate everybody's comments. All right, everyone.
Jim, before we go, would you explain how the after chat works? Because we'd love to have people over there, and some of us will be able to join you there.
Oh, yes. Thank you. You'll see the after chat session link in the chat box. It should be put up several times through this, but if Stan, you can put up the link one more time, that would be great. It's on a different link, so you'll have to take the link there. It just went up. Just click on that link. You'll go to another session where everybody can see one another, and that gives all the attendees plus the panelists the opportunity of interacting in a more informal context. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you all again here tomorrow on Humanity Rising.
Thanks,
Bye for
everybody.
now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Jim, when you